Welcome to magnificent Loch Lomond in Scotland for the first staging of a brand new event. It's a triathlon with a difference. It's challenging, it's adventure tri. What is adventure tri? Well, the format of this new style triathlon follows the familiar sequence of swim, bike, run, but instead of a continuous event, adventure tri doesn't have a transition area. The 2004 Adventure Tri series was held in Scotland at Loch Lomond in the Trossachs National Park and Loch Tay in Perthshire, and also in Wales at the Celtic Manor Resort. One of the biggest differences between a conventional triathlon and the Adventure Tri series is that each stage is an individual leg, and the entire grueling, challenging day is held over 10 hours to give the competitors time to move between the different stages. Now this means that the organisers can find the most interesting and challenging courses without the constraints of having suitable water next to the mountain bike and running sections. There are separate men's and women's races, a 1500 metre swim in Britain's largest expanse of fresh water, a 20-kilometre mountain bike course through the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park, and the final stage is a 10k trail run when the adventure triathletes will be joined by 500 club and fun runners. The overall men's and women's winner will be based on the lowest cumulative time over the three disciplines. So the final winners are not necessarily the first across the line at the end of the competition. To help spot the leading adventure triathlete, look out for the yellow race leader ident on the mountain bike and trail run stages. Today we have over 60 competitors who have travelled from different parts of the UK and Ireland to take part in the first Adventure Tri race. And of course it all happens against the stunning backdrop of Loch Lomond. This is one of Scotland's most spectacular regions. Loch Lomond in the Trossachs National Park is less than 45 minutes from Glasgow, an area of 720 square miles offering visitors rugged hills, water, tranquility and activity. It's a park for all seasons. And the loch is over 22 miles long, 600 feet deep and has 30 islands. So now you know how the Adventure Tri race works, and you've seen some of the terrain the athletes will have to negotiate, but what about the athletes themselves? Well, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm about to board the Maid of the Loch and see who I can find.
The event is called an Adventure Tri. It is not a continuous race. Your times throughout the day will be computed by the championship, which will be tied around one of your ankles throughout the event, and the overall winner, their time will be on aggregate time over the three events.
The format's a very exciting format, and I just think it's going to be quite a lot of fun today, so I'm looking forward to it. A new challenge, something different.
Unfortunately I missed out on the Olympics, so I'm just trying some new things, enjoying my racing and preparing actually for an event a bit later on in a few weeks' time, the National Championships, the British Championships, and this is very good preparation for me and a very good training day.
But it's a different challenge, and I think once my truly competitive career is finished, I like doing things a little bit more for fun these days, so anything that's a little bit different and mixes it up is a bit more of a challenge.
Well, that's enough of the talking. The weather is shaping up beautifully and it's almost time for the first stage of the men's Adventure Tri race, an early morning dip in the loch.
Well, come on in, the water's lovely. The men were just beginning to get a feel for the conditions in the loch before the race proper began. A very healthy turnout for the men's Adventure Tri meant that the swim had to be started in two waves. The faster swimmers were seeded in pole position over the slower second group, and the chip timing system meant that it made no difference to the final times. The Lomond style start meant that the competitors had to negotiate a tricky and very slippery slope before actually hitting the water. 10 seconds later, the second group were off and running for the 1500 metre swim. This done over the 2 laps of a specially arranged course at the southern end of the loch. So the 2 groups headed out into the loch, and it didn't take long for the swim specialists to begin to make their mark on the race.
First to show was number 26, Richard Stannard, easy to pick out with the distinctive red top and his wetsuit. 31-year-old Stannard from Surrey, among the favourites for the overall event here. He's got an outstanding track record in aquathon, that's swimming and running, and triathlon competition. And at the first turn, boy, Stannard was already carving out a bit of a lead for himself. His nearest challengers, number 35, Stephen Sheldrake, he's from New Zealand, and the young Irishman, Gavin Noble, number 21.
It wasn't long before Sheldrake was cutting into that lead and gradually hauling back Stannard with a powerful burst. As they reached the second turn, boy, he was almost within touching distance of the leader. And as the end of the first lap drew near, the pair were almost neck and neck. But the Englishman just managed to keep his nose in front of the Kiwi. And as the aerial view clearly shows, there wasn't an awful lot in it.
Now, it's at this point that you begin to realise just how unique this event really is. The swimmers have to get out of the water at the end of the lap, run back up the slipway, not easy when you've got slippery feet, round the marker post and back down into the water for the second lap. Richard Stannard showing he's just as quick on land as he is in the water.
As the leaders went back into the loch for their second lap, number 21 Gavin Noble was just emerging in third place. His halfway time of 9 minutes and 46 seconds was almost 15 seconds behind the lead pair. And as the high shot shows, there really was quite a scrap on for fourth place behind him. The still waters were only disturbed by the furious action of the swimmers. You can see just how much of a lead the front 2 had built up from the rest of the pack.
And as they went round the marker, boys, for the second time, it was very much as you were, with Richard Stannard just holding off the challenge of Stephen Sheldrake, and our pole camera taking you as close as you can possibly get without actually taking part. And that's the turn for home, and it's a straight battle between the Englishman and the New Zealander Sheldrake, a professional Ironman. Now, he's a regular competitor in the Ironman events, which are staged all over the world.
As they hit the home stretch past the Maid of the Loch paddle steamer, it was the Englishman Richard Stannard who was displaying an iron will and a determination not to be beaten in this opening event. Encouraged by the home fans, he was first out of the water, and an impressive turn of speed up the ramp took him through the winning tape in a time of 19 minutes and 11 seconds, with Sheldrake just 2 seconds behind in second place. A minute behind the winner came the third man home, Gavin Noble from Ireland, with the Scot Fraser Cartmel winning the scramble for fourth place. So the results of the men's swim. First, Richard Stannard just 2 seconds in front of Stephen Sheldrake, and Gavin Noble a further minute behind.
1911, you happy with that, Richard?
Yeah, that's fine. I was glad to get in the lead. I was quite shocked to have Stephen right on my feet. He was about a second behind me, so that was quite tight, and I've got my work cut out in the rest of the disciplines today.
My weakest discipline is the swim, so now I can hopefully work it really hard on a bike and pull some time back and claw it back from Richard and the other guys in front of me.
Richard, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic swim. You now get to put this right on the front of your mountain bike for the next leg.
Cheers, Ali. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Connick Hill, a favourite for ramblers, is part of the West Highland Way and en route to the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park, which is the backdrop for the mountain bike section of the Adventure Tri race. Aberfoyle is in the very heart of the park. For most visitors, the attraction of this forest lies in the peace and quiet and magnificent views. Not that our Adventure Tri competitors are going to have much time to stop and enjoy those.
The Adventure Triathletes have repositioned 20 miles northeast to the Queen Elizabeth II Forest Park near Aberfoyle. There are miles of forest roads around here, making it the ideal location for the mountain bike stage.
But for every non-swimmer, there's a non-mountain biker. Second place Stephen Sheldrake admitted that he actually had to borrow a bike from a friend the night before the race. The course is 3 laps through the forest roads, taking in 2 tricky and very slippery technical sections. And these conditions and surfaces are very, very different to road cycling.
You certainly look a bit grubby already. I take it you've had a little trial run.
Yeah, a couple of guys just went around the course to have a look at the course, and it's not that technical, but one of the descents is quite muddy.
I'm sure a mountain biker would say they weren't that technical, but definitely for me they are. I'm used to riding on nice flat roads.
It should make for an entertaining afternoon, a chance for the non-swimmers to catch up a bit.
But they can all run, and that's exactly what they had to do at the start, a Lomond style to get to their bikes. 32 competitors meant that there was going to be a bit of a scramble in the early stages of the race. But just as with the swim, the specialists made sure that they were in the front pack almost from the off, and it really didn't take too long for the field to be stretched out along the very first uphill stage.
First to show were the Scot, Fraser Cartmel in blue and England's Morgan Donnelly in yellow. Cartmel was 4th in the swim, so he was clearly preparing an assault on the overall race leadership. Donnelly, however, was 21st in the swim, a good 9 minutes behind the winner, so plenty of work for him to do then. And the Welshman Richard Jones, who finished 5th in the swim, was leading the chasing pack. That's him coming through right now.
But it wasn't long before Richard Stannard, with the yellow race leader's ident, was attacking. Here he is in black and white, going past Morgan Donnelly to take 2nd place. Looking comfortable on home soil was young Fraser Cartmel, who was beginning to extend his lead from the event leader. Stannard, very much one of the favourites for this event, with an outstanding pedigree. He was world champion in the 2003 Aquathon, that's a run-swim-run event, and of course, as we know, he just missed out on the Olympic team for Great Britain for Athens. But he did have his work cut out here to reel in Fraser Cartmel, the current Scottish duathlon champion.
Morgan Donnelly in the yellow jersey was beginning to feel the strain at this stage. He'd slipped back to 5th place behind Paul Gallagher, and Richard Jones put on a surge to reclaim 3rd place. So, at the halfway point on the first lap, Cartmel had the lead. Next came the steep descent, or technical section, as mountain bikers prefer to call it. Now this is a section which sorts out the real bikers from the part-timers, and if you look closely, you'll see that Fraser Cartmel lost his bottle, well, in a very literal sense. And of course Richard Stannard was in 2nd place, but Cartmel still very much in control. And the ever-smiling Morgan Donnelly back in 3rd.
Stephen Clark and Chris Stewart, Chris in red, were in the thick of the chasing pack, making their way down the steep downhill section. The riders were well stretched out along the course now, all chasing this man, Scotsman's Fraser Cartmel, who had a firm grip on the race, but he wasn't out of the woods yet. Morgan Donnelly was going very well, now up to 2nd. Event leader Richard Stannard had slipped back to 4th place, and the pack were beginning to make up ground on this fast section of the race. And then it was into the woods, where the going was particularly tricky. Not everyone had the mastery of the mud and the tree roots.
Morgan Donnelly approaching the end of lap 1 and flying along in pursuit of Fraser Cartmel. But the Scotsman was stretching his lead into lap 2. And it was Richard Stannard's turn to stage a comeback, and he's now right up behind Donnelly in 2nd as they came to the descent for the 2nd time. Donnelly from Northumberland, a fail running specialist, but pretty handy on the bike as well. None handier though than this man, Fraser Cartmel, being handed a water bottle to replace the one he'd lost in lap 1, and a well-earned drink for him.
Now, spectators obviously find the woods provide a very good vantage point. The fact that most of the falls occur in this section is purely coincidence, I'm sure. But falls do happen even at this level, and they happen to the best of them. Now there's the event leader Richard Stannard finding the going a little bit tricky. He falls, but then he's quickly back on his feet and back in the saddle. As they went into the final circuit, it was Fraser Cartmel in the lead, but 31-year-old project engineer Morgan Donnelly was chasing hard, and his assault on the lead had really taken off. Another Scot, Paul Gallagher, was back in fourth, but Richard Stannard was leading the charge on the front two. Can he close the gap to keep his race leader position?
Welcome back to the Loch Lomond Adventure Try for the closing stages of the men's mountain bike race. For well over half an hour, 32 triathletes have cycled through the mixed terrain provided by the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park, and the leaders were midway through their third and final lap. Frontrunner Fraser Cartmel was now lapping back markers as he went into the steep technical descent for the final time. Now Cartmel had finished fourth in our first event, so he's looking good for a leading place in the overall event.
Morgan Donnelly from Northumberland was lying second, but he was making no impression on Cartmel, who was tearing past the stragglers. In third place was event leader Richard Stannard, but he was a long way behind Donnelly. Lying in fourth place was Paul Gallagher, another Scot with excellent triathlon pedigree. Donnelly needed a good run after a disappointing swim, but Stannard, who won the swim, didn't want to finish too far behind Cartmel, or else his overall leadership would be under threat.
Meanwhile, Richard Jones was putting in another sterling performance. At this stage, he was lying fifth, which is exactly where he finished in the swim. Paul Gallagher, in fourth, was also looking to get on the leaderboard after finishing seventh in the first event. But there was no catching Fraser Cartmel as he sped through the woods for the third and final time, and then back onto the road. A tremendous race by him.
Richard Stannard still hadn't given up the chase, and to him at this point, every second was vital.
Fingers, come on,
Further back, Stephen Clark came unstuck on the descent and was passed by Chris Stewart. Also among the chasing pack were Chris Volley, Gavin Noble and number 16, Blair Cartmel, younger brother of the race leader. Some were finding the going pretty tough. Ian Rankin, a faller there, and he wasn't the only one.
Well, the leaders were closing in on the finish. Paul Gallagher in the woods for the last time. But there was no stopping Cartmel as he lapped one of the bike markers as he left the circuit to head for the finish.
But Fraser Cartmel was the clear winner, thoroughly enjoying the final few metres and crossing the finishing line in 42 minutes and 9 seconds. Morgan Donnelly put in a final spurt to finish just 17 seconds behind Cartmel in the end, a tremendous chasing effort which was acknowledged by the winner. Then came overall race leader Richard Stannard in third, but would his time of 43 minutes and 59 seconds be enough to keep him in front? Paul Gallagher came home in fourth, but it was Cartmel and Stannard who were jostling for the outright lead in the adventure try. So the result of the men's second stage, the mountain bike. First Fraser Cartmel in 42 minutes and 9 seconds, then Donnelly, and in third place, Stannard.
The hill was really tough, and then the descent, straight after it's really technical. I mean, read in the stuff, the sort of pre-race information, that it wasn't going to be too technical, but couldn't have coped with it being much more technical. It was excellent.
I was a bit apprehensive after falling off in the warm-up, and I just thought to myself, well, you've got to use your adrenaline, get the competitive edge going. I like to race, so I thought, well, I'll go out, and we've got an uphill section, and I tried to use my fitness and strength on the uphill.
So Cartmel's great mountain bike ride there did indeed mean a change in the overall position. Cartmel now leads with Stannard in second place and Paul Gallagher in third.
Well, Fraser, because you now are officially in lead position, you get to wear one of those for us. There you go, take the leader badge.
Thank you.
So Stannard is now in second place after stage 2. He won the swim by 2 seconds. It's now the turn of the women to get wet at Loch Lomond. They've got 1,500 metres to swim. Let's see if they can be just as competitive. Have you done a lot of training for this event?
Well, I'm a full-time triathlete, so it's
well, we don't do much mountain biking, but we do all the swimming, open water practice and a lot of running, but obviously on the road and things like that.
I was brought up in Glasgow, and I used to come here with Glasgow Triathlon Club to train on I think it was a Wednesday evening, and it's not in your own back door, and there's no excuse not to, really.
Well, with 15 competitors in the women's race, there's no staggered start for them. Same course though, 1,500 metres split into 2 circuits with a running start and a finish to each circuit. In the early stages, 2 swimmers were starting to dominate. Number 83, Katrina Morrison, in second place, just behind number 82, Alice Hector. Both women are Scottish residents, though Alice has recently moved up from Somerset.
And they were certainly finding Loch Lomond to their liking, stretching out an impressive lead. As they went round the first turn buoy, you can see that they've left clear blue water between them and their nearest challengers. Charlotte McShane, another Scot, and Carol Bridge, the Rhondda Tri Club in Wales. Now that's Charlotte, number 86, and close behind her, Carol, wearing 76. And the aerial shot clearly shows them coming round the first turn buoy, some distance behind the front 2. And as they approached the final stages of the first circuit, the leading pair were clearly in control, with Katrina Morrison hot on the heels of Alice Hector.
Alice recently finished second in the British Duathlon Championships and was certainly looking strong as she headed past the Maid of the Loch paddle steamer, along the side of the jetty and up towards the slipway. The run up the slipway, apart from giving the spectators a close-up of the swimmers, can also prove quite crucial to finishing times. Racers need to strike a balance between sprinting and avoiding any costly slips, which are always possible with wet feet. Alice Hector and Katrina Morrison had stretched their lead by halfway. Carol Bridge was now leading the chase on her own, with Charlotte McShane having slipped back into 4th.
Meanwhile, Nicola Davies from Cumbria was making a charge in 5th place, but still a good way behind the front 4. At the front, the leaders were neck and neck at the start of the second circuit, and by the time they'd reached the first turn buoy, they'd swapped places, with Katrina Morrison taking over the lead from Alice Hector. But Alice wasn't out of it yet, and halfway around their second circuit, she was pushing Katrina once again, actually matching each other, stroke for stroke. The girls are good pals and they train together at Stirling University. Katrina won this year's Scottish Sprint Triathlon Championships, while Alice finished 4th, a position which was good enough to win her the Under-23 title.
As they reached the jetty at the end of the final lap here, the younger woman, Alice Hector, was back in front once again, albeit by the narrowest of margins. The late surge was proving highly effective, and Alice held on and was first to rise out of the water. Her sprint up the ramp got her a finishing time of 23 minutes and 28 seconds, with Katrina in second place, just 3 seconds behind her. Well, despite the swim being the weakest of both athletes' 3 disciplines, they're going to be absolutely delighted to come out first and second in that first one. Third place went to Carol Bridge, a full 1 minute and 7 seconds behind, while the youngster Charlotte McShane finished a plucky 4th.
Coming home in 4th place.
The results of the women's swim. In first place, Alice Hector, just 3 seconds in front of Katrina Morrison, with Carol Bridge in 3rd.
What were you thinking the whole way round, Alice?
I was thinking of the sprint finish. I knew we trained together at Stirling Uni, and so the plan was to we knew we were similar speeds, so the plan was to kind of stick together and then see what happens at the end.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
And do you think that helped you the whole way round then, Katrina?
Oh yeah, I don't think a lot of people are aware, but if you can swim on someone's feet, you cut your energy consumption down by a good 20%, so it's actually easier to sit right on the bubbles. And so we thought we'd take half of the course each and give each other a rest.
Well, Alice, that means that you get to receive our leaderboard, which goes on the front of your mountain bike for the next stage.
Yeah,
You're
I hope
welcome.
I can keep it.
The Queen Elizabeth II Forest track certainly proved challenging for the men. Let's see how the women's race develops.
Well, to remind you exactly what this mountain bike course is like. It's 20 kilometres in the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park. It's 3 laps and it's got very difficult technical sections. As we saw with the men, it's those technical sections that counted.
I'm feeling pretty positive. I want to give it everything. I'm not looking forward to the sort of downhill bits, but I'm hoping my nerve will hold and stuff. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it.
A few nervous competitors here because, as with the men, a number of the racers normally race road bikes and are not used to the mountain bike difficulties. Like the men, it's a Lomond style start, and once again Alice Hector shows everyone a clean pair of heels, reaching her bike well before the others. But unfortunately she's not quite so quick on the pedals, and she's quickly overtaken by a number of the other mountain bike specialists before she's even left the field. Let's remember, 3 laps to come, featuring a steep ascent and then a tricky and technical downhill section.
And first to show was Fiona Lothian, who certainly had her work cut out for her as she finished back in 11th in the first event. Carol Bridge, third in the swim, was quickly in contention in second place, and then it was a long way back to a pack of 5 riders led by Nicola Davies, or Nick as she prefers to be known. That's her in the yellow shirt. Iona Robertson in black was lying in 4th. Alice Hector, the overall leader, was in 5th, just in front of Mary Rose Cross in red. But Fiona Lothian was looking strong out in front. A bit of a veteran these days. Fiona, who represents the East Fife Tri Club in Scotland, had great duathlon success in the 90s, and before that she was a member of the Scottish hockey team.
The others were having their work cut out to keep up with her early pace. Carol Bridge had been caught by Iona Robertson in black and red, and then it was a significant gap to the chasing pack. Julia McTaggart led that group from Katrina Morrison, Alice Hector, Mary Rose Cross in red, and then you just get a glimpse of Nick Davis back in 8th place. Our helicopter picture now gives you an idea of the size of the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park and just how steep this opening section was for the riders. Even the leader, Fiona Lothian, was finding it a bit of a slog. And the others, well, they were finding it even tougher.
But Fiona Lothian was soon heading into her first technical downhill, closely followed by our helmet camera bike. And just to prove how tricky it was, Fiona, who had looked so impressive on her way up, was soon on her bottom.
The order had changed behind her by this stage, and with Katrina Morrison now in 2nd and Iona Robertson in 3rd, Carol Bridge had slipped back to 4th, and things were just about to get worse for her. Oh my goodness. Now that was painful, and yes, I think she really felt that one. It was a relief for all the riders to get back on the track at the bottom. Morrison and Robertson enjoying the chance to get up some speed. Nick Davis and Mary Rose Cross did likewise. But no one was going quicker than race leader Fiona Lothian. The wooded section was the next major hurdle, and Iona Robertson ran into a bit of trouble here and was overtaken by Nick Davis and by Mary Rose Cross. By the end of the first lap, Nick Davis had forced her way up to 2nd place, just in front of Katrina Morrison. But the event leader Alice Hector was very much still in contention.
Fiona Lothian was way ahead of them all and was soon back at the summit and ready for her second attempt at the steep technical descent.
Okay,
this time she'd got it mastered and managed to stay in the saddle. Further down the field, Alice Hector was looking less confident on wheels than she was in the water. Lying just behind the leading pack, she approached the technical descent with what can only be described as a bit of trepidation. But her swim partner, Katrina Morrison, was enjoying a storming ride and was now in 2nd place. Race leader Fiona Lothian was rolling back the years as she negotiated the woods and raced towards the end of her 2nd lap.
Katrina Morrison was looking good in 2nd, while Nick Davis was by now a clear 3rd. But Lothian was the one to catch, and by the time she reached the descent for the third time, she was looking very comfortable indeed. That first lap now seemed like a distant memory. And the mental toughness that Fiona Lothian has to have had to do what she's done at world-class duathlon and indeed on the mountain bike really showed through here. Morrison was chasing hard, and she was on course for the overall lead if she could get another second place. But like so many before her, she also fell foul of the hazardous descent, really in quite spectacular fashion. But again, very quickly back on her feet. Davies was lying in third, but she was too far behind to take advantage of Morrison's fall, but managed to get down the hill herself without incident. Carol Bridge there, who had that awful fall on the first circuit, deciding this time that discretion was the better part of valour. And the overall race leader at the beginning of this stage, Alice Hector, took a leaf out of the same book. Can she still be top of the leaderboard when she gets to the bottom of the hill?
We're coming to the end of the last lap of the women's mountain bike stage here at the Loch Lomond Adventure Tri. Race leader Fiona Lothian seemed to have this event wrapped up. She'd led from the start and didn't look in the mood to surrender it now.
With just half a lap to go, Lothian was totally in command. And as she turned into the hairpin bend that would lead into the home straight, the big question was just how far would her fantastic ride propel her up the leaderboard. As Lothian had been a disappointing 11th in the first event, the swim, she needed a massive win here to get back in contention. She crossed the line in an impressive 52 minutes and 42 seconds, but was that enough? 1 minute and 43 seconds behind came Katrina Morrison, second in the swim, now second in the mountain bike. A great effort from her. And the results of the mountain bike for women: first Fiona Lothian, 1 minute 43 ahead of Katrina Morrison, and Nick Davies in third.
Fiona, that was a magnificent ride. You're now right up in second place. How did you find the course?
Really good course actually. It suited me. Long hard climbs which I got away a little bit, and then some technical downhills which I gained a little bit of time on as well, I think. So yeah, I really enjoyed myself.
Well, the game plan was to stay on the mountain bike, but unfortunately I didn't really stay on.
How many times did you come off?
I think just twice.
Okay, not bad.
Twice that I can remember, but I can possibly be concussed in the moment.
Well, I chose to come off on the technical bits. I ended up being a complete girl and walking down.
Well, the overall women's leader after two stages, first Katrina Morrison, and she is 6 minutes 18 seconds of Alice Hector in second place.
Well, Katrina, I'm sure this is what kept you going round that mountain bike course. You're now our official leader, so make sure you're wearing that when we get ready for the trail run. Well done.
Loch Lomond Shores is where the competitors will start and finish the final stage in the Great Trail Run. The 200-acre Balloch Country Park forms the majority of the 10k course, including a long ascent between the 4 and 5 kilometre points. The course then flattens out by the time the runners reach Balloch Castle, which was built in 1808 for Clyde shipbuilder John Buchanan.
And this is the course. The single lap 10 kilometre run starts at Loch Lomond Shores, crosses the River Leven before entering Balloch Park, and finally ends up back where it started. In about 30 or 40 minutes time it will be all over. That's the estimated time the top runners can expect to clock up in this, the final event, the 10 kilometre trail run.
My legs are tired now, it's hard. So yeah, just see how it goes. Just run hard, same as usual.
At some point I've got to make a move to get that 38 seconds back and stop anyone else closing me down. Now, running isn't my strongest discipline in triathlon, but I would hope, I've been doing a lot of run training, so I'm hoping to produce a reasonable race today, but the day's wearing on. I'm quite tired actually.
Are you feeling the other two events in your legs now?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And has not having a transition helped or hindered you, do you think?
I think I actually prefer to get it all over at once.
Morgan Donnelly, the man who always runs with a smile on his face, led out the 34 starters in the men's event, and all the main contenders for the overall prize were quickly into the opening bunch.
Early leader though is number 6.
And 3 minutes later it was the turn of the elite women, just the 14 of them. And as with the men, the 3 main contenders in the overall event, Katrina Morrison, Alice Hector and Fiona Lothian, were all quickly into the front positions. And although Morrison had a big lead after 2 events, the others were clearly going to do their best to make sure she didn't have it all her own way. And as they made their way past the visitor centre at Loch Lomond Shores, an interesting race beckoned.
Back in the men's race, a breakaway group of 6 had developed early on, with all the usual suspects at the front. The overall men's event was much tighter going into the trail run, just 37 seconds separating Fraser Cartmel and Richard Stannard, and less than 90 separating the 3rd, 4th and 5th places.
In the opening stages of the women's race, Katrina Morrison was making the early running from Fiona Lothian and Alice Hector, who were both right on her tail. And shortly afterwards, the Club and Fun Runners Great Trail Run started, with some 500 competitors following in the footsteps of the elite runners. Beautiful conditions as the mass ranks streamed past from Kinnan Tower, but they could never catch up with the elite event.
In the early stages of the men's race, Morgan Donnelly in yellow had just edged in front. Richard Stannard in the white vest was in second. The Welshman Richard Jones was in third, with overall race lead of Fraser Cartmel just behind, alongside Gavin Noble of Ireland. Donnelly, number 6, is based in Northumberland with the Tynedale Harriers Athletic Club. The women's run had definitely become a 3-horse race, with Morrison, Lothian and Hector having carved out a significant lead from the others as they crossed picturesque Balloch Bridge over the River Leven.
Two kilometres into the men's run and Richard Stannard had hit the front. Remember, at the start of the race he was 37 seconds behind the event leader Fraser Cartmel. At this point Cartmel was just off the pace in 5th. That's him in the white vest with the cap. The leading women now entering the woods at Balloch Country Park, same 1, 2, 3, Morrison, Lothian and Hector. Katrina Morrison, a 27-year-old Scot, finished 5th in the World Elite Duathlon Championships earlier this year in Belgium, a member of the British Triathlon team and the reigning Scottish Sprint Triathlon champion. Alice Hector and Fiona Lothian swapping 2nd and 3rd places behind her. All 3 were setting a very good pace and already passing some of the slower male competitors.
Meanwhile, at the front of the men's race, Morgan Donnelly had put in a surge to regain the lead from Richard Stannard, with Gavin Noble still in close attendance in 3rd. Donnelly's injection of pace at around 4-kilometre mark certainly stringing out the race with only 4 runners in view at this stage. Katrina Morrison was putting in her own burst of pace at the front of the women's race. Alice Hector was hanging on, but the veteran Fiona Lothian was beginning to feel it and had fallen back some way into 3rd. Richard Stannard was not about to let Morgan Donnelly get too far in front. With his eye very much on the main prize, he knew that he had to stay in contention here.
But a breakaway had now taken place in the women's race. Katrina Morrison had now left her friend and colleague Alice Hector behind and was continuing to overtake some of the men who'd started 3 minutes before her. Halfway in the men's race and Donnelly and Stannard were out on their own at Balloch Castle. Donnelly still managing a wave and a smile. And Gavin Noble was still hanging on in 3rd, but the rest were now a long way behind.
Event leader Fraser Cartmel was finding the trail run not as much to his liking as the swim and the mountain biking. And also off the pace at this point was number 23, Paul Gallagher, who was struggling here. 4 kilometres gone, 6 to go for women's race leader Katrina Morrison, the 27-year-old Scot based at Stirling University. And by now she'd established a substantial lead over Alice Hector, who in turn had got some way ahead of Fiona Lothian.
But it was these footsteps the others had to follow, Katrina Morrison showing dogged determination at the front. And Donnelly was now about 4 kilometres from home as he hit the grassy section below Ballochcastle. Richard Stannard showing great determination in second, not letting him out of his sight. The halfway stage in the women's race, and leader Katrina Morrison could afford a glance behind and was no doubt pleased to see that she was well clear of the field. At the water station at the castle, which she made full advantage of, a quick bottle for the head and a well-deserved gulp for the throat.
Alice Hector was some way behind in second, but behind her in the red shorts, Fiona Lothian was putting in a spirited race. She wasn't out of it yet. Number 81 in fourth was Iona Robertson, who dropped out of the mountain bike stage, wasn't threatening the leaderboard, despite this gutsy run. Katrina Morrison looking every bit the race leader, and indeed the overall event leader. The men's race was nearing its end. Leader Morgan Donnelly was entering Balloch High Street and was heading for the bridge in the final kilometre. Stannard not too far behind. But Donnelly was running well, and as he took the tight turn off the bridge, he didn't look in the mood to be caught.
The women's race was still very much in the grounds of the castle, with leader Katrina Morrison about 4k from home, with time to enjoy the view, if she fancied. But no such luxury for Alice Hector and Fiona Lothian, who were locked in a fascinating battle for second. Lothian having found a second wind from somewhere. However, the race was all but sewn up for Morrison as she headed out of the Balloch Country Park, her lead as secure as ever.
And so to the finish at Loch Lomond Shores. Morgan Donnelly, who may not have been wearing the yellow event leader bib, but his yellow t-shirt had certainly dominated the race, and he was in great shape as he sprinted for home. The 31-year-old Tynedale Harrier and Northumberland Fell runner finished in a time of 33 minutes 55 seconds. But more importantly, not too far behind was Richard Stannard, winner of the swim, third in the bike, and now with a great chance of taking the overall prize. His time, 34 minutes 6 seconds, and a handshake from Donnelly. In third was the Irishman Gavin Noble, who'd taken part in an event the night before, a fantastic effort from him, and in fourth place was the Welshman Richard Jones.
And the leader of the women's race, Katrina Morrison, was just some 200 yards from home at the end of a superlative run in which she destroyed the rest of the field. As she hit Loch Lomond Shores, she was about a minute and a half ahead of her nearest rivals. Now, she told us that she used to want to be an astronaut when she was at school. And she may not have achieved that particular goal, but she's certainly on a different planet here. Second in the swim, second on the bike, and a country mile clear in the 10k, thoroughly deserving the warm applause of the locals and a clear and worthy winner of our first women's adventure try.
Katrina Morrison, running on home soil in Scotland, took the tape with a winning time of 38 minutes and 17 seconds. A fantastic effort from Katrina. Behind her, the race had taken another twist, and the experienced Fiona Lothian had overtaken Alice Hector between the park and the town. That late surge guaranteed her second place with a time of 40 minutes and 42 seconds. Iona Robertson finished strongly in third place in a time of 38 minutes and 14 seconds, but as she didn't complete the mountain bike stage, her time didn't count, which left a disappointed Alice Hector to take the official third place in a time of 41 minutes 26 seconds. Though looking at that reaction, perhaps the word disappointed is something of an understatement. Carol Bridge from the Rhondda Tri Club in Wales finished 4th. Diane McPherson was another who didn't do the swim, so 5th place went to the youngest competitor in the event, local schoolgirl Charlotte McShane, with a fantastic effort and a 10k time of 43 minutes and 13 seconds. And Nicola Davis from Cumbria finished in 6th to add to her 3rd in the mountain bike race. And of course it was a great day for the club and fun runners who took part. The winner of that race was Paul Thompson from Helensburgh for the men, and for the women, Kate Chapman of Glasgow. A clear-cut victory by 2 minutes and 25 seconds for Katrina Morrison in the trail run over Fiona Lothian. But in the overall women's after 3 stages, a massive 5 minutes and 11 seconds for Katrina Morrison, again over Fiona Lothian.
Katrina, congratulations. You are the 2004 Adventure Tri winner. Happy?
Relieved.
So will you do another Adventure Tri?
I think before I do another Adventure Tri I'll need to get out on that mountain bike, but hopefully maybe the one in Loch Tay in October.
Suffered a little bit on the run, but I decided just to try and put as much time into people as possible on the bike. So I worked really hard on that. Paid for a little bit on the run, but I had enough gap over 3rd place to make it comfortable.
I was a bit disappointed with the run in the end. I was warned there was a couple of hills in it, and when I didn't check the course like myself. When I got there was hill after hill after hill, and I suffered for the last 3-4k or so.
And so the trophy goes to Katrina Morrison, the winner of the Women's Adventure Tri event.
And the result of the trail ride for men, a win for Morgan Donnelly, just 11 seconds in front of Richard Stannard, with Gavin Noble in 3rd. Which leads to the overall men's winner, Richard Stannard, just 1 minute and 9 seconds in front of Fraser Cartmel.
It's a great day. It's been a long day, but a fantastic day. It's something I've really enjoyed, not done before, so I was a bit apprehensive, throughout the day, and got through it and was very pleased to win in the end. Because it's so different, I'm not used to, say, riding a mountain bike. I had to sort of, try and limit my losses, as it were, and just get a bit of aggression going, get excited and have a go on the bike. And then on the run, again, it was slightly different than we used to. We used to roads, whereas today it was uphills, down dales, different surfaces, and I was pleased to have a reasonable performance on the run as well.
I'm tired and sore, but happy. Yeah, I couldn't have asked for any more. Richard's a world-class athlete, so brilliant.
I like this kind of format because it's more unique. It's an individual time trial every event that you do, so it's not like the fastest person should win this event. Unlike a normal triathlon, so I prefer this.
And Richard Stannard received his trophy from Karen Taylor of Sponsors Event Scotland before taking his place on the podium to warm applause.
It's been a tough day, but hopefully a very enjoyable one.
Well, it's been a long, challenging day for all of our athletes and, of course, our top two. What's been the most memorable part for you, Richard?
Definitely the mountain biking. It was a real challenge, having not done it before, and it worked the heart and lungs, and something I'll probably use as a training tool in the future.
Fantastic. And Katrina, what about for you?
Yep, the run, definitely most challenging part. Way too many hills for my liking, but good solid effort in the end.
Well, we've had a fantastic day here at Loch Lomond. It's goodbye from all of us here, and of course we'll see you again next weekend.